I would like to invite everybody at the table to please make yourself a name tag with just your first name, large enough for me to see it without squinting because I have enough wrinkles already. And then we can get started.
Can you cop those name tags around? Thank you.
They're not sticking on clothes.
And so you guys are going to have to rotate them around. Actually, I'm just going to write down everybody's name, and then that way I'll have it and you all can see each other's. So we have Klaus, and we have Marina, and we have Frank.
Stinky back.
That's a good idea.
The trouble with the bottles is that you can only add in one direction.
Yes.
Well, we could make four name tags and then it would fix every direction.
The city
Actually, we could put them on our foreheads, right?
Who'd like to be first?
And then me. All right, so welcome everybody. Thank you so much for participating in these dialogues. How many of you have never been at one of these dialogues before? Okay, there's one.
I guess.
Okay, so I'm going to briefly go through some of our guidelines and our protocols. And does everybody have one of these handouts with them? Okay, good, thank you. So, first of all, I'll introduce myself, that would be helpful. I'm Kathleen O'Legan, and I am a professional facilitator, mediator, and trainer. My company is Bridges of Peace. Both Jeanette and myself are independent contractors, not employees of the city of Albuquerque. We're contracted as professionals to facilitate these conversations. And we have no bias and no attachment to the outcome. Our goal is to help you feel heard and be heard, and to capture your thoughts into a summary report. And so that's what we're here to do for you. My job as the lead facilitator is to help us keep our conversation friendly, focused, on task, and on time. And so I invite you all to please support me in being able to do that. And Jeanette, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Jeanette, and as Kathleen said, I am a contractor as well, facilitating here. Enjoying what I'm doing here so far. I'm just really excited to be a part of this work. So I kind of introduced myself in a more personal way, but thank you for letting me be a part of this.
So an important thing for us to focus on as we move through these dialogues is that while it is the past that has gotten us to the place we are right now and has inspired these dialogues are about the future. How do we create a future that's different from the past, where we don't have the challenges that we have faced in the past? So I'm going to continually direct all of you to please keep your comments future focused. Because what we are going to do is we're going to be asking you specific questions about what kind of future do you want to create. And your answers are going to go into a report that you and them will compile, and so that we can look for trends in what our community wants in terms of police-community relations. So if you can all please look at the back of your handout, you can see where we are and where we're going. So we're right now in phase one, which is the listening phase, okay? And so we're going to have facilitated meetings, we have online surveys, we have comment forums, and all of that information, and every meeting has a report that comes out of it. Then, after we have finished dialogue number 20, can I help you find something? Oh, you're just trying to get his name. After we have finished dialogue number 20 on June 6th, that will conclude phase one. And if you haven't already gotten a calendar of the upcoming dialogues, we've added a bunch. We added from 14 to 20, or 15 through 20 are brand new, just recently scheduled. Once we complete,
Where are those listed?
they are on calendars that are out front with the big color stripes on them. Thank you. So when we complete dialogue number 20, on June 6th. We will then be moving into phase two, where the UNM representative is going to analyze the data, and then we're going to announce it to everybody. Then we're going to have community groups help create action plans to implement the ideas that are implementable. So those meetings are still being designed in terms of the details of how that will happen, but so that you know that your time and your thoughts are not just going off into the ethers. They will be brought into a report. We will determine as a community what the priority recommendations are, and then we'll develop action plans as a community in facilitated meetings that will then be implemented and monitored by community members. Okay? Phase 3 is monitoring. And there will be a committee made up of stakeholders that will track the action plan and make progress reports to the mayor and the city council about how their recommendations are being implemented. Are there any questions about what I just told you on phase 3? Yes, Tony?
I have a problem with the word stakeholder.
Okay.
Should that not be people in general, we the people?
Yes, yes. The whole stakeholder thing came through something when at the very beginning, and they were just looking at what groups of stakeholders are most affected and make sure, and perhaps least represented in the issues between police and community, and making sure that we focus on those stakeholders as well as the rest of the community. So absolutely, every single one of us is a stakeholder. But basically when we're using it in this context, we're simply saying that it's not going to be the city government that carries this forward. It's the community, all of whom are stakeholders. Thank you for that. All right then, so if you look at the agenda on the inner left page, you see that we have the goals of these dialogues are to create a collaborative, diverse, and broad-based dialogue, and to create a sustainable action plan that transforms police-community relations now and for years to come. And we have guidelines. Before we move to that, I need to do something I forgot to do, and that is to let everybody know that we have a videographer here who would like to record this session. Would you please introduce yourself and tell them the purpose and the forum of your videos?
Yeah, my name is Charles Ersom, and I'm just simply a concerned citizen, and I'm videotaping these to send out to the public at large so we get a bigger audience, you know. And I'm trying to be completely transparent and objective with these things and putting everything out there that is said here today. I do, being that these are such long meetings, and when a person sees an hour and a half worth of video that they're going to have to watch, that kind of turns them off. So what I have started doing is a little video trailer. So what I'll do is take some highlights of 1 or 2 or 3 of you speaking and make a little 2 or 3 minute video trailer so that a person can look at that in a short period of time, and if it interests them, then they can go on and look at the rest of the meeting. So being that these take so many hours, they're usually in 2 parts. So I'll have the video trailer and then a part 1 and a part 2 of the entire meeting. And these are being put up on my YouTube channel under my name, Charles Ersom. Last name is A-R-A-S-I-M. That's it.
Thank you, Charles.
Have you got a card that you can pass on?
I do not, but
Last name again?
A-R-A-S-I-M. If you go to YouTube and go in the search engine and just type in my name, you will find them.
So is there anybody here at the table that has a concern about being videotaped in this meeting and having this conversation with videotape? Excellent, thank you. All right, thank you, Charles.
You bet.
All right, so looking at the guidelines for dialogue, many people say that these guidelines are simply common sense, but sometimes we forget our common sense. So as a reminder, I'm going to invite each and every one of you to please speak and listen with respect so that we may learn from one another, to be as concise as possible so that everybody at the table has a chance to share their thoughts. If you disagree with somebody, please address the problem without attacking the person. We want everybody at this table to be heard, and the quickest way to not be heard is to attack another person because they shut down. So seek clarification before you make assumptions. Seek solutions as we talk about recommendations for the future. Seek solutions that are going to meet everyone's needs. We ask you to share your thoughts, beliefs, and ideas without trying to convince others to change their own. We're each entitled to our ideas and our thoughts and our opinions, and we want to honor that. And to listen and understand and gain insight into the experience, listen to understand and gain insights into the experiences, beliefs, and concerns of others. So, those are our guidelines. I'm going to invite you to abide by them. Does anybody have any concerns about that? Okay, rocking on along there. Let's see what else I need to cover. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with introductions of the participants. And what I'd ask you, this is under the 545 section of the agenda. So, you've heard from Jeanette and myself, and what I'm asking each of you is just to share your name, the part of the city you live in, and what inspired you to take the time out of your life to be here as a part of this conversation. And to be as concise as possible, because of course we want to move into the questions that we need to get answered. So I like to do things in a sunwise direction. So Klaus, if you would be willing, would you please do your introduction?
So, my name is Klaus Nicolaides. I live in the northeast of the city, Albuquerque. And the reason I'm here is because I'm an Albuquerque police officer. And I'm not an officer for too long. And before I became an officer in the Albuquerque Police Department, I had a total misconception of what it actually means being a police officer. So I would like to convey the information I and my family learned in the last 2 years to everyone who has questions about what we do and why we do it.
My name is Melinda Julens. I'm married to him, and I'm here for the same reasons as but from a spouse perspective, because it has been a real eye-opener when he joined, went into law enforcement.
Thank you, Melinda. And Fred, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Frank Ernst. I live in the southeast Heights in the Parkland Hills subdivision, 3 blocks south of Highland High School. I am the block captain for my neighborhood watch, and I've had good relations with law enforcement over the years. I was in the Sheriff's Mounted Search and Rescue in T. Harris for 5 years, and I did some ride-alongs with the police a few years ago when I was a crime prevention person for the Neighborhood Association. And I thought tonight's meeting was going to be with the police talking to us. I was going to ask them 2 questions. Maybe can I throw them out now?
Well, yes, but I'm not going to take
No, you don't have to
answer
answer
now, but sure.
Well, 2 would be if they could tell us what the crime is like in other cities our size compared to us, because we hear so much negative, and I've heard some negative when I've been out of state. So I really don't know how our amount of crime compares with other cities our size. I mean, I've taken so many precautionary measures and to kind of assume the way things are is everywhere. And number 2 is what we can, individuals, me in specific and everyone in general, the community can do to help the police, because they're undermanned now, and they're going to be even more undermanned as time goes on. Plus, they are quite maligned in the news. I think it's more important than ever for us to show our support for them.
Thank you for that. And I also, I imagine if you look at the questions later on, you're going to see ways that, or you're going to hear ways that the community can support the police. And when we take a pizza break, about halfway through, pizza free.
Oh,
No charge. Right. That might be an opportunity for you to have a conversation with Klaus as our representative of the police department.
Yeah.
And so it's not going to be them talking to us, it's all of us talking together, and we're very glad you're here, Frank.
Thanks for coming, Klaus.
Thank you for coming too, Frank. Tony, how about you? Tell us your introduction, please, sir.
I'm Tony Gerard. I live outside the city. I live south of Boston Farms. And the reason why I'm here is there's just been too many decades of police brutality, abuse. I've been beaten up several times by cops myself. It really makes me angry that the police have killed so many, and when it got into killing American veterans, that's when I got angry. And I feel that the police that have done all these killings, they need to go to jail. And I just like to see the department get cleaned up. It needs to be broken down and rebuilt from the ground up.
All right.
It's that simple.
Okay.
And the thing that really makes me angry right now is there is no citizen involvement in any of these supposed departments like citizen oversight, oversight of internal affairs, public relations, all those departments that need the community to get involved and clean up this department and clean up the corruption that's in our.
Okay, thank you. And there are a great many efforts underway that you may or may not know about, but we're not going to talk about them now. But the nice thing is that for someone with your degree of passion and having not participated in these dialogues before, it's wonderful that you can give your voice to the answer to these questions that we're going to be asking about how do we create that relationship that you're so longing for. So thank you for that, Tony. And John, how about you?
My name is John Varsa. I'm a member of Civitan Club here in town, which is a volunteer organization that provides voluntary services for the community. I've been at about 6 or so of these meetings so far, and I find them very interesting, and I hope they come out at the end as being very helpful to the improvement of the relationship between civilians or citizens, however you want to put it, and the APD. I abhor the killing of Boyd and wish to express that I could never be on that jury because as far as I'm concerned, there are 2 murderers in the police department.
Okay.
And I would be, of course, wiped out by the defense attorneys.
So,
I have 2 occasions when I myself have been involved with the police department.
I'm going to stop you from telling the stories, though, if you don't mind, because we have to get to the questions.
I'm sure you'll tell the story as you go along,
Yeah.
Say what?
and we welcome that. I said, I'm sure you'll tell your story as you go along,
And
we welcome that.
right, and the thing is that what I was guessing is that you were starting to tell stories about negative experiences, and I'm not trying to thwart that. And I think that when we get to the questions about what kind of relationship would you like to see, your experience is going to definitely inform your answer. And so I think that John is right, that your story will come out. So I apologize for thwarting you here, but right now we're just doing intros. Okay, so thank you. Barbara.
I live downtown. I was on my way here, and there was a police situation happening with one person sitting on the curb and about 5 officers and 4 cars, and I thought that I would stop and see what was going on, so that's what happened. Charleston or wherever, South Carolina, they put cameras on their cops today. They fired somebody and charged them with murder. Boom.
Today.
We need that kind of action. We do not need a mayor who continues to say, we're just like every other place, we have some problems and we're working on it. No, we need action, we need change, and that guy showed us how to do it in South Carolina yesterday and today. That's how you do it. You don't make excuses and wait around. You take care of business, and that's, you know, all this, people taking pictures and then people saying, well, it didn't really happen the way you saw it in the film. Anyway, so I'm here.
So, again, I'm hearing some passion that's really going to feed some of the answers for the questions that we have, and thank you for that, Barbara. And Kathy, how about you?
I live in the Northeast, and I'm here because I've lived in a whole bunch of cities in my life. My husband was in the Air Force. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
Okay.
I've never, ever seen a police department kill as many people as this police department's killing. And they're not only killing them, they're torturing people every single day. And they're violating civil rights every single day. And I'm here to do what I can do to put a stop to it.
Thank you.
Because it's bullshit. Sorry, but it is.
You can say that word in my presence. Everybody else is going to object. If that's what's on your mind. Thank you for that, Kathy. Appreciate it. John, how about you?
Last but not least, my name is John Licari. I live in the Northeast Heights, like a lot of folks here do. And what inspired me to take part in these dialogues, I guess, the ongoing drama in the news about, you know, what is happening with our police department and how it's ramifications on our citizenry. But I guess I'm here to express, or try to express, my thoughts about possible favorable change that might come about, and also my thoughts on how to support a group that has a very tough job.
Thank you.
Talk a little bit more about that as we go along.
And so I'm hearing a lot of people at the table who are crying out for change and longing for change, and that's what we're going to talk about, is how do we change, specific recommendations for how things can change. And I've also heard several people at the table speak in support of collaboration with our police department to make things better. And so I think that's a very important part of it. And so thank you all for your introductions.
Do you want me to sit up here in order to participate? I didn't see the chair up there.
I'm sorry.
Did you want me to sit up there to participate? Because you didn't ask me to introduce myself, so I'm assuming you didn't want me to participate, or you didn't see me.
I didn't recognize you as being somebody who wanted to participate. I apologize for that oversight.
Am I supposed to sit up
If
there?
you want to participate, take that chair.
Okay, I didn't see the chair when I came in, so
All
I
right.
figured.
No, you're certainly welcome, and I didn't recognize you as somebody who
That's
wanted to
okay.
speak. I
That's
apologize. When you get a chance, make a name tag for yourself, but so that we can get going, please introduce yourself and answer the questions that the other candidates.
I'm Diane, thank you. I'm Diane, and I am focused on building more trust, integrity, transparency, and openness in Albuquerque and New Mexico government, not just APD, but beyond the scope of that. From my observations, there's a lot of room for improvement. I spend a lot of time on trying to make things better here, and I'm having some success, so that's a good thing.
Congratulations and welcome. And do you need to back?
I'm sorry, I've got one.
Oh, you got one too? Oh, you have.
I'll use that one too.
All right.
I've already made a mess of my agenda.
Okay. All right. So let us move forward then and talk about the questions that we're going to be exploring. The first one that we're going to be asking you about is what your goals and expectations for police-community relations are. Did you want to add, are you trying to answer the question right now? Oh, okay, what I'm going to do is go around the table.
Okay, all right.
So you'll get a chance. But I want to do a little clarifying first, because sometimes people get confused about the difference between question number 1 and question number 2. They're very similar, but they are different. The first one is what your goals and expectations are for community relations. The second question is what your goals and expectations are for community interactions. The difference between the two is that relationships are how people are connected and the context in which they're connected. Interactions are what creates the relationships. So if you say, for example, that you want to have a friendly relationship with between the community and the police department, then you would be later describing what interactions would create a friendly relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And similarly, whatever relationship you want to create, then we talk about what interactions create those relationships. So,
And then you're saying number one, police-community relations. Can you define that again? What is that?
the relations is the overall dynamic, the context in which we are connected to one another. Right.
How it interacts with the community.
Well, and what the relationship, so if we want the relationship to be, forgive me, authoritarian, then the interactions would be power over. If we want that kind of interaction. If we want the relationships to be, let's say, collaborative, then what kind of interactions can be collaborative relationship? Because people often desire a relationship, but don't know how to interact in a way that supports that relationship. So that's sort of the difference between the two. Now, if you answer a question that doesn't quite fit into the question, I'm not going to stop you. Jeanette's going to take it and put it in the right spot in the report. So I'm just trying to give you some clarification so you understand the difference between the questions. Then after questions 1 and 2, we'll take a break. And then when we get to the 7:10 slot, we're going to be talking about concrete recommendations as to how to make those interactions and those relationships the way we want them to be. Right? And that might be where some of the things that people were starting to talk about will come in. So this time, I'm going to go in the opposite direction. And John, I'm going to ask you to please answer question 1 for us. We'll get to question 2 in the next round.
I really haven't solidified the thought. I'll pass and then maybe pick it up coming around again.
Okay, and if I forget that, please remind me.
Sure.
I was kind of looking forward to what you had to say.
Well,
First, but
you know,
that's
I'm
okay.
hoping that I'll have something to say by the time it comes around.
John, did you need to say something?
Yeah, let me interrupt with the following for all of us. Please speak loudly as if you're speaking to the furthest person away, so that we all get a chance to hear your voice.
Good
Thank you for
idea,
that
good
reminder,
thought.
John. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so Diane.
Well, I think we need to focus on trust. And without trust, in my opinion, without trust, the relationship is not able to reach its potential, and certainly may not even be adequate. So when you're building a society without trust, then what happens is things start breaking down. And not just with APD, but there's other breakdowns that are going on in our government, not just in Albuquerque, but in New Mexico too. And fortunately, we have some laws in place which give citizens an unbelievable amount of latitude in trying to address things. So we have, here in New Mexico, a lot of ability to make change. But with APD in particular, I think trust is of utmost importance. And unfortunately, when, my first experience, bad experience with police was watching the O.J. Simpson trial and seeing how Mark Furman was masterful at lying on the stand. And at that point then I said, you cannot trust cops, period, and they are trained to lie. So that one incident back in the early 1990s, I believe it was my first observation. And of course, as time goes on, and even the incident that just happened in South Carolina, that incident affects all police officers all throughout the United States. And the police need to realize that when they are deceptive, and when they think they can go beat up a homeless person and nobody's going to find out about it anyway, or they can lie about it after they crush somebody's testicles. Those kinds of things damage not just APD, but they damage all police departments. It's unbelievably myopic for a police officer to think, well, I can get away with it because I'm a trusted public servant. And so lying works, especially in the courts. So I just want to say my focus is on trust. And the only way that can happen is by being trustworthy in your actions.
All right, thank you for that. And when we get to the interactions question, I'm guessing you may have some ideas about what kind of interactions will build that trust. So thank you for that, Diane. Kathy, how about you? What do you see as the ideal relationship between our officers and our community?
I think for starters, it would really be helpful if the police would stop behaving like the Army.
Okay, so can you define the relation with that, what the relationship would be?
Sure, because the police have this mentality that when they put on their badge, they're entering into a combat zone. And I've heard police say this. And that, to me, is a huge part of the problem. It's
So
the way that
Sorry, you said they're
the
entering
view.
what?
Combat.
Combat.
Okay, so if I could reframe what you're saying, you do not want combative approach, I get that. What would you say is the opposite of the combative approach? Now we know what you don't want for a relationship, what do you want?
Support, help. Police officers, I think, should think more in the, they need to be focused on helping people. I think it would probably do good if some of them went to a nursing program so that they learned how to interact with people in a positive way instead of coming at them with military assault weapons.
And so we're going to get to that interaction piece, but what I heard from you is that the opposite of combative is supportive.
Yes.
And you implied collaborative. Would that be accurate, or am I putting
It would be nice.
Okay.
But if that would be nice. And I think that police officers are, and particularly in APD, are lacking in compassion.
Okay.
And that's what I would like to see change.
All right. And would it be accurate to say that you would see those dynamics as being two-way, community toward police as well as police toward community?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Sure, but I think, as Diane stated, the trust is so blown that in order to collaborate, we're going to have to work on that trust issue.
Okay. And we'll get to some recommendations for that later on in this conversation. Thank you for that, Kathy. Barbara, how about you? What do you see?
First, I want to apologize for everybody. I have got a massive allergy problem happening, and I'm miserable.
Barbara, I'm the same way. I'm looking at you, and I'm thinking to myself, she's feeling the same way I am.
I think is when I first came in, I was out in the wind, and then coming
Yeah.
here, so it's calmed down a little
Yeah.
bit. Oh my God. I really apologize. I mean, I just feel like scratching my eyes out.
Yeah, I didn't know
I'm
you
trying
did.
not to do that. So, the militarization of the police is really problematic, I think. And, it's a national policy, it's a federal policy, it is a recruiting policy. We're looking to have people come from the military. And I think we're being treated like an occupied country.
So what do you want to have it be?
I want to stop seeing these outfits that they put on that look like combat uniforms. That they don't look like, they are combat outfits that they're putting on for, various different kinds of situations. It takes virtually nothing, it seems like, for massive amounts of gear to come out, and whether you're doing anything really outrageous or not. I mean, I do appreciate that our country has become uncivil. We see it in Washington, D.C. It is modeled everywhere in our government, the lack of civility, the lack of collaboration, the lack of willingness to get along. is being modeled from the top down, and people are armed to the teeth, which has been encouraged by various different factions in our society. And I understand that it is tough to be a civilian in a police force that has been trained and encouraged to be militaristic. I don't blame them. So I would like to see, I'd like to see less of a military presence with the police.
Okay. So what's the opposite of a military presence in your mind? What would be the words that would describe the opposite?
Civilian.
Okay.
I'd like to see them be civilians, not military stormtroopers.
Okay.
I'd like to have civility. I'd like to, encourage us to be more civil, and we criminalize people who are living on the street merely because they're collecting Social Security and it's insufficient to pay their bills. So they end up on the street, and we don't provide any opportunity for them to have housing on the street.
And that's a huge issue, and it's a digression
I'm just saying,
from this focus.
it is an extension of everything to treat people uncivilly, and it is not just because the police do it. Our mayor does it, and our president does it, and our governor does it, and our legislators do it.
So civil relationships.
And we do it to each other.
So civil relationships between all peoples is what I'm hearing. And the police.
We all need to, I think the people need to be encouraged as well to try to raise up our level of getting along.
Okay.
But it's not being shown very much, and it's very discouraging.
Thank you. So John, what would you like to see as the ideal relationship between our police department and our community?
I would like to see the training of police changed to include everything that has been said so far.
Okay. So that's a recommendation for an action. What kind of relationship would that action create?
A better one. Let's start with that.
Okay. Pretty broad, but helpful. Thank you.
Klaus is a citizen of Albuquerque as well as an APD member. I would like to see, and as far as I'm concerned, you can tell your comrades what I'm about to say, the loss of a superiority complex. Just because there's a badge on your chest and a .40 caliber automatic hanging from your head, that doesn't make you superior.
So an relationship of equality I'm hearing, is that right?
Yeah, that's that partly fits into the definition. I don't know who said it and which of the 6 meetings I've already been to, but policemen need to get it into their heads that they are peace officers. There's a concept involved there. That concept has to be, number one, explained by those who know what it means and absorbed by those who are going to wear the badge and the .40 caliber automatic.
So a relationship of peacekeeping.
Just because someone has a broken headlight doesn't make him a criminal.
Death penalty.
Okay, so how would you label that as in terms of relationship? I get your point. I'm not arguing your point. Would it be? I'm not sure what the word is. Tell me what kind of relationship would it create if the police did not consider headlights a crime?
Somehow the police are taught by the cadre of the police department when they're being trained to be policemen. Somehow they're taught that they have to first watch out for their own good, for their own welfare, and be safe when they're approaching a situation or approaching the back of the driver of a car whom they've stopped, and their hand is on their pistol, and they're approaching from the left rear, so they have a controlling position, or think they have a controlling position. It's hard for me to describe this in short sentences and a short paragraph.
She's capturing everything, we'll make sure it gets, Jeanette is capturing what you're saying, and we'll find a place to put that in the report to get those
But
concepts.
the main concept that I'm talking about is the wording I've already used, superior attitude.
So you want the opposite of that? You want the opposite of a superior attitude?
There's never going to be agreement and collaboration when one party has a superiority complex.
Okay.
There will never be cooperation. Not from this kid, I'll tell you that.
Okay, all right, good, thank you.
And now that I have the floor, I'll give you one of the two examples
Very briefly, please.
very quickly. I had a piece of personal property confiscated from me by the police department. It took me 3 years in a lawsuit against the city of Albuquerque and the APD to get that piece of equipment back and to get a substantial sum of money out of the city of Albuquerque for violating my constitutional rights. They don't know what the Fourth Amendment means. They don't know what the 14th Amendment means. And you can tell the police department or those of your colleagues that you want to, that I've said this. And I'd be glad to give you my telephone number and my email, and they can communicate with me if they'd like.
We need to go ahead and hear from some others.
Please
Thank
go
you so
ahead.
much, John. Tony?
For decades, there's been a military buildup of all police departments all over the nation. The people need to quit being afraid of the law. They have to realize that the people are the power, and they have the control over their public servants.
And were they to realize that, what kind of relationship would that create?
It would create a more communicative, so to speak. But our elected officials need to know that they work for the people. And the police have always had a hands-on-the-gun approach every time. That's fear in itself. And I've run from the gun myself a couple of times. And I because they don't have the right to touch that weapon, because I don't have a weapon. I'm not threatening their life. They always have this mentality every day that they go out into the field that their life is in danger. I don't buy it. That's a bunch of BS if I've ever heard it.
So more about that relationship. Any other thoughts on what the relationship would look like?
Well, they really need to show the public that they can disarm. Oh, when it comes to dealing with homeless people, they're not doctors. You know, they shouldn't even be out there going up against a homeless person that might have a mental problem. I mean, it's obvious that when a homeless person is approached by an officer, instant fear, you know, and they've been abused so many times, and everybody, it's every race is affected. They pick on everybody, you know, it's
So what kind of relationship should there be between the officers and the homeless?
I really don't think they should be approached by police.
Okay.
I think that they should be approached by, well, I've always said that there should be a citizens intervention team.
Okay.
And there's another thing that is not included in the police department.
No, but you're not going to capture that as a recommendation.
Well, there are several times where I've heard and seen where they're coming up against homeless people and people with mental problems. And I, for one, if I knew the situation and I see what's going on, it's instant. Cops are all right there. But there are plenty of times where I would step in harm's way to save that person if I could. And James Boyd was a good example. You know, I don't want to talk about that one. I mean, it's kind of emotional.
Yeah, I get you.
But there are several times where I felt that citizens, you know, they get angry enough to see this stuff, and I wouldn't blame them for jumping in there and trying to solve this problem, because that's all that homeless people and people with mental problems see. They're approached by the gun every time. They're afraid of that uniform.
So the relationship should be one where there doesn't have to be a gun as part of it when the other person's unarmed, and that the relationship between the homeless and the police officers should be minimized, and instead the relationship should be between people who can support and help the homeless rather than those who are in an authoritarian.
Yeah, it doesn't really necessarily have to be, the homeless or the mentally ill. It's just, any situation in general.
Okay, good.
But it's just a lot of times there are plenty of times where police officers don't need to have all that weaponry on them.
Gotcha.
The uniform is, like I said, like Kathy said, it's something that causes fear, and they need to change that. They need to change the colors. They need to change their demeanor. They need to change their approach on everything.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to ask you for more specifics on that when we get to the interaction question, because changing approach has to do with interaction. But if you're willing now, I'm going to go ahead and move on to hear from Frank. Thank you for that, Tony. Frank, how about for you? What relationship would you see as being ideal between our community and our police?
Well, I'm on the fence post. On the one hand, I've had nothing but good relations with the police and sheriff's department. Work with them now as a block captain, and can see, empathize with their bit of a paranoia because of, as Kathy was saying, we got high crime in this area. When I was visiting a cousin in Georgetown, north of Austin, a couple people approached me that had used to live in Albuquerque and relating to me how high the crime rate is here in Albuquerque. And that was one of the questions I was going to ask of the police, is how's the crime in this city compare with other cities our size. So on the one hand, I can understand a bit of a paranoia on the part of the police. Now on the other side of the street, I'm surprised that no one's mentioned what was on the news recently about them getting training, military-style training, siege-type training over at Kirtland Air Base. And it was suggested that this military siege raid-type training be stopped for the police, maybe just for the SWAT people, but not certainly for the ordinary beat cop. So. Plus, as it's been mentioned, and this is all over the country, is our, the police and so many departments are being supplied with military equipment, military, the guns. I mean, does a policeman really need an automatic weapon? Wouldn't a semi-automatic weapon be adequate? I mean, how much control do you have with a fully automatic weapon? I'm a veteran with PTSD. Luckily, it's mild, but I can sympathize with people that have mental issues. And obviously, the police are not getting adequate training. in how to deal with mentally ill people.
Okay, so that'll be a recommendation, get more training medically for men, work with mentally ill. So
That's
then.
been mentioned also.
Pardon me?
Well, it's been mentioned, you know, throughout the, and in different newscasts and stuff.
Oh, yes, and it's come up as recommendations in many of the dialogues already. But just to clarify, so when you're talking about your concern about the officers getting military training,
Yeah.
would I be accurate in saying then that you would like the relationship between the police and the community to be non-military?
Yeah, they do have a bit of a siege mentality, and I've seen this before in San Diego.
No siege mentality?
Yeah, and I really didn't have a lot of respect for those police because of their authoritarian siege mentality. I haven't seen it towards me in Albuquerque, but had a very good eyesight of it in San Diego in the early 70s. I don't know if they still have that siege overreaction kind of mentality in San Diego, and I don't think they killed as many people, but when you have that kind of a mentality, it's an adversarial.
Okay, so non-adversarial.
And I'm going to get into a little bit here, and for part two, question two, and saying, unfortunately, we don't have enough police to do it right now, but when we have enough police, I'd like to see more beat cops like we had, you know, in earlier history. And this would maintain, you know, when they're not just driving around in their car looking at everybody, if they're out there walking amongst them and conversing with them, I think the beat cop would definitely be a huge solution to better understanding between the public and the police department. I don't, you know, they obviously don't have enough police officers to do that. They're cutting their bike patrol in half now, and that was probably a good way of dealing with the public. So that's a little bit of type one and question one and question two, and thanks for your patience with me.
You're welcome, and I just want to make sure that I inferred correctly what you meant when you said the beat cop. I infer from that what the relationship would be improved because it would be a more personal relationship, and rather than the officer driving by, but we'd stop and we'd say, hey, Klaus, how you doing today, and how's your buddy? Why?
Well, what I meant is they'd be actually walking.
Right, exactly. So
or on the bicycles like they have now. They'd have more one-on-one relation, you know, and it'd be less of a, you know, you get less of a feeling of authoritative driving around, you know, looking at everybody, and instead they're mixing it up with public.
Great. Thank you for that, Frank. Appreciate that.
Can I just add one thing?
Briefly, please, because
yes. People don't believe that PTSD can be caused by police. It can.
I didn't know anybody didn't believe that, okay?
Well, yeah, a lot of people don't believe it. I'm just saying, but PTSD by cop is a real thing. And there's this sweet little lady that I know that has it, and she calls me up when she starts to have attacks, and I do my best to calm her down.
Okay, so that would imply to me that a non-traumatic relationship, one where there isn't trauma between the officer and the person who they're working with.
But that trauma can materialize at any time.
Of course.
And so I help her out as best I can, calm her down.
Good for you. Thank you for
Have a
that.
little training in that.
Thank you for that. All righty. Well, Melina, how about you? What would you like to see as that ideal relationship?
Well, a lot of the things have been mentioned already. I'm one of the last to go around. But like everybody else, we would like to see mutual respect.
Mutual respect.
And mutual trust. And a personable relationship. Like what Frank was saying, the old style beat cop, that you know who your officer is, and your officer knows who you are. But we have nowhere near the amount of officers to be able to do that.
Right.
Yes, hopefully we will one day.
Maybe one day.
So it sounds like you're in accord with a lot of what you've heard, but you're also adding that piece that it needs to be two-way. That all of those relationships and the behaviors and demeanors that go with those relationships need to be both ways.
Right, because you can't have trust just one way, you can't have respect one way, And you can't have a personable relationship if it's only coming from one direction. So it has to be a two-way thing.
Thank you for that. And Klaus, how about for you? And I know that you may want to offer some clarification. I see you writing notes to people with comments. So before you offer the clarification, would you answer the question? And then if you need to offer clarification.
My goal would also be mutual respect, because, I mean, I treat everyone I come in contact with respect. I treat them like my grandmother would like to be treated, to start out with. Unfortunately, I'm not called to coffee and cookies. I'm called to people who have a bad day, and I'm called to people who are bad and have a bad day. Not what we normally see here. So that's one thing which needs to be understood, unfortunately, is that police itself, and I'm a citizen as well, and if I'm in contact with police, I would like to receive this respect as well. I would like to be treated nicely, but I don't call a police officer a pig. I don't spit at him. I don't try to attack him. So there is some different ideas how society sees police and how police is being treated. And America as a whole, with just a little sidebar here, is quite a bit different in what they allow citizens to display, or how they allow citizens to treat their police force. It doesn't happen in a lot of countries. I mean, honestly, I have to say, this is just not.
The lack of respect. Is what you're saying.
The lack of respect is not.
It is tolerated.
Yeah, it's not tolerated in other countries.
Right.
What do they do?
For instance, if you call a police officer an ass in Germany, you get fined $500, and it goes up from there. They treat you with respect. I mean, it's just that they don't take the disrespect, and it's not that they use a wooden stick to explain to you that this is not happening. It's a lot easier for them to just fine you, and that's the reason. I think it's a little bit on a more human basis, and that's the next thing. There is no understanding here what a police issue is. I have to talk from the police side here because everyone else talked from the other side. I really understand what you're saying, and I'm in agreement with most of the things which have been said. But if I get called to someone because the 13-year-old kid slapped the kitchen table, that's not a police issue. If I get called to explain to a 6-year-old to get dressed because she doesn't want to go to school, that's not a police issue.
Does that happen?
That happens, and we have to go to these calls. If I get called to someone who has a mental breakdown, and I have to talk him into an ambulance for 2 hours, is this really a police issue? I'm not sure if this is the right person to call for these issues. And then for my goal would be also basically the respect, the understanding on what we actually do and what we should be doing, because it's two different things in my opinion. And then support. I would like to get a little bit of support from the community, and I understand what you think about the police department, and I can talk a little bit to the training later, but I have not seen the people you describe working with me. And trust me, I'm looking out for these signs. But I have not seen it. I've seen people I'm a fairly calm person, but I've seen people even calmer talking to drunk people who could have been arrested and half an hour ago, and they still try to talk him down. So,
You're talking about police.
but police, yes. So now I'm trying to answer a few questions which Kathy said that we need more compassion. I see a lot of compassion in the police department. There should be more, I absolutely agree, but it's a time problem because we are going to calls which are not a police issue. And I would like to have the personal connection with people. I would like to go to the stores in my beat, knock on the door, say, hey, I'm Klaus, I'm here, that's my beat. If you have any questions, any problems, I would like to talk about it. All we do is run from one call to the next call to the next call, and honestly, more than half of these calls are not a police issue. We just have to go there.
Why?
Because that's the city's policy, that if someone requests the police, that we have to do it. There was an extreme pushback when the police tried not to go to car accidents without injuries. I understand that they want the police officer there, but then we need the police officers to do it. And there's a disconnect.
And then we've also talked about, and you referenced it in previous dialogues, that you and other officers have talked about parents who use the officers as a boogeyman to, to get them to comply with the parental role. And that's part of what you're talking about when you say the things that are not police issues. Is that right?
Then I heard twice a comment about assault weapons. I don't have one. I mean,
See what went down last night?
Yeah.
Say that again, please.
I do not have an assault weapon.
An assault weapon.
That's a general impression that the public has of each guy,
There
each
are-
police officer is
This
strapped
was
in an
last
assault
night
weapon.
at an
Yeah,
apartment
that's
complex
a
with
SWAT
little children
call-out.
walking around.
That's a SWAT call-out. That's not a beat call. These people are called, and you're right, there are assault weapons in the police department, there is no question. But not every beat officer has one. I don't have one in my car. I'm not even trained on one. And many, I think in my squad, there are 2 people who are trained on a long rifle. They don't take it out of the car except for certain specified reasons. Militarization and combat gear, that's something you mentioned, Barbara. I'm not quite sure. And the outfit. I would like to have a little bit different outfit too. But the black, for other reasons though. I don't think the black looks very nice. It's not very inviting. That's one thing.
That's a good point, Ed.
Black is not very nice in the sun.
That's right.
Trust me. It's not the best thing in New Mexico to wear.
Depending on how you pose in black, it can look pretty aggressive too.
Yeah.
I agree. But I don't know what I wear when I go out, which looks like combat gear, because I'm wearing basically dress pants, a dress shirt, and I have my gun belt with my tools. So it doesn't seem so combat-like to me. The picture you showed me, yes, that's a specialized team. I agree. That's a combat team because they get called out for very specific reasons.
For every 5 minutes.
Not quite, but
Maybe that could be scaled back too. I mean, it's kind of like the police decide to address every situation as a SWAT situation rather than, like having somebody telling your children they have to go to school.
So that is an interaction recommendation, Jeanette, if you can capture that.
So then John mentioned a superiority complex. You said something about a
Superiority complex.
And I think there is definitely some part of this is true. But it is true by definition because police officers are a certain type of people. You only get a certain type who does this job. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm just trying to offer a little bit of background. Because if you're looking for people who you want to enforce the law, who, when they hear shots, don't run away, they run towards the danger. You want people who are not afraid of danger, and at the same time, this type of person automatically is an A-type person. It's a person who wants to tell you what to do. Again, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying the police profession as a whole attracts these type of people. You said something about broken headlights. Yes, broken headlights aren't really a crime. You can be cited for it. I have not cited one single person for a broken headlight. I told them that they have a broken headlight. I pulled them over, let them know that they should fix it. And when I get a normal human being interaction, that's where the interaction stops. But honestly, I'm human. I have to admit, I'm not perfect, by no means. If I get someone leaning out of the car window, telling me what type of stormtrooper I am, to pull them over and let them know what's going on, I have two options, right? I have the option of giving him a ticket and not giving him a ticket. Next thing is, I get told I'm a pig, so I'm veering a little bit into the option of maybe I should check the license plate too now. See where I'm going?
Yeah.
It's not right. I'm not saying it's right, but that is human, and police is human. And I have very good interactions with police officers in other states and in this state, and for the most part, I'm not saying all, because obviously there are police officers who shouldn't be police officers. I haven't met them yet, but it's like in every profession. If you treat them with respect, they try to respect you too. And the whole idea is, though, that the power of a police officer has been entrusted by the community. So you as a whole want the police to enforce the law. And one very dumb example is, if you see someone driving through a red light and I sit at the red light going through to a call, I feel the burning ice in my neck, everyone expecting me to pull this person over and give him a ticket. If you are this person and you run a red light, everyone who's being pulled over for getting a red light expects me to be nice to them and not give them a ticket. So it's always on what side of the fence are you on? It's not very easy to do both at the same time. And sorry, that takes a few seconds longer.
Okay, as quick as you can, just wait for John to get to the next question.
So, homeless people, he said, are afraid of the police. That's what you stated to me. I have very good interaction with some homeless people. I got a signed Bible from one homeless guy. I have a lot of talks with homeless people. I see a different problem. The law doesn't work for homeless people. The whole organization of our society doesn't work for homeless people. We are called to displace homeless people. Other people call us because they don't want homeless people. And we are supposed to fix an issue with no tools of fixing an issue. And I can see that sometimes this is not the right way of going at it.
Let me add that what the homeless people are really angry about is their identifications are torn up, their social security cards are destroyed, they're in and out of the system, in jail all the time, and that's where a great deal of anger comes toward you, or toward officers. And I don't think there's very few officers that may offer the proper help for these people.
Yeah, and we don't have the tools to help.
Well, there's other programs that citizens can think of, but
I just want to answer Frank's question. He made 2 points. One about crime in Albuquerque. The murder rate is comparable to other cities.
Now, you say murder rate by police or murder rate by citizens against each other?
Both, actually.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We can argue about that. But the violent crime rate in Albuquerque is higher than in a lot of other cities which have a comparable size.
Okay. That's what I found.
And there's an interactive map that just came out by KOAT or KOB that you could click on the map and it showed how many, and we were like 463 compared to 200 and something for others. There's an interactive map available.
And then the last point I would like to make is the military training at Kermland Air Force Base.
Yeah, that was on the news recently.
Yeah, it's not really military training. The training we get is police training and the military facilities being used because they have the best facility in the area. That's the only shoot house where you can use live weapons and train. What you train is, for instance, one of the trainings is room clearing. So if you call us for a burglary and you don't know if the burglar is in the house, we go in the house with our guns pulled. In order to train this, you need a safe facility where you can have instructors watching from the top what goes on. It needs to be at night, during the day. They have all these possibilities of playing these scenarios. You can actually shoot in these houses. So you train, but there is no military convoy, military training, no training with long guns and stuff like this.
You don't use fully automatic weapons?
Not in this, not on the Air Force Base for this training. There is training, fully automatic weapons.
Yeah, that's where you pull the trigger and then bullets keep coming out until you take your finger off.
I don't even know that anyone, except maybe the SWAT team, and I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
Any beat officer has a fully automatic weapon.
No, well, maybe the SWAT. And I don't see where any police, SWAT or anyone should have fully automatic weapons.
So I have not seen any fully automatic weapon.
Even with SWAT?
Photos. Okay,
that's an AR-15.
We need to get back to the focus of answering the questions. So thank you for all of those.
Yeah, thank you, Klaus. Appreciate your addressing all of our issues.
That was.
And they were good points too, by the way.
Yeah.
It's my turn, so thank you, Claude.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry. And Mrs. Fox, welcome. Because I think all of us are going to walk away with just a little bit of a different attitude toward the police by your being here and saying what you said. Just for curiosity, what does your day consist of? What shift are you on, as an example, or do you rotate?
Before we go to that, if we take the time for that, I won't be able to ask you for your recommendation for relationships. So.
Okay, then, okay. I'll pull in my horns here and just, I heard trust being talked about, and trust is good, not only in the police department, but between it and its citizens, but trust goes a long way anywhere in life. And changing uniforms, that's a good idea, I guess. If people find them offensive, I personally don't. I've had 2 incidents with police officers directly in this town. One of them were very professional, and the other one was not so professional. It was I think a veteran who had been listening to other police officers all his life, and he had a certain way of conducting himself, which was not necessarily admirable. He probably should have been one of those who take the early retirements, but the news that I've read is that, you know, there was, because they're short of police officers in the town, is that there was a lowering of standards to allow them to hire more people. And I think we're in part suffering the consequences of that particular period where people weren't vetted properly. And where I'm coming from is I think it all begins with when you want a trustful police department, that you need one that is trained properly, and that the candidates are vetted properly. And that's something perhaps we can talk more about as we go on.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that, John. All right, so we actually went way into our time for interactions. For the second question, what are your goals and expectations for interactions and conduct? But I think that we sort of got a lot of that answered as people were talking. And we should be having pizza in about 15 minutes or so, if the pizza delivery man is on time. But what I'd like to do is just briefly go around the table and hear if there are any other expectations and goals for interactions. When that face-to-face, like we heard from you, Frank, that one of your goals for interaction was that face-to-face relationship with a beat cop. So that's an example. But if we can be as concise as possible and direct to the question, then when we come back from break, we'll be able to do our recommendations and be on task and on time, which is my job. So this time for question number 2, I'm going to start in the middle and we're going to work our way around this way. And so Tony, do you have any other goals and expectations for actual interactions that we haven't already said?
Well, This might be a little off the subject, but
Uh-oh.
there's a lot of, a great percentage of war veterans or veterans that are in police departments. And what really gets me is how do they feel after they find out they've killed another veteran? I really don't think they have any compassion, really, for those kinds of things. And like I said, with people in general, they don't need to show so much disrespect, but it's just because they've interacted a lot with police, that's why they have the crummy attitude that they have toward police and calling them pigs and different names. So it's I don't know, I think a lot of therapy would help with it.
But what I heard, Tony, is I heard, if I got you right, that the interactions should be compassionate,
Yeah,
right? And that they should be sensitive and respectful. Would that be right?
yeah.
Okay.
But like I say, police officers interact with a lot of disrespectful people, and you're right. I mean, you don't need to go to calls where they have to correct a child for not going to school or something like that. In those particular situations, I would say that they should tell their parents, you know, we're not here for that. But if you're going to insist that you want to, that they have the officer interact with the kid, then that's where they should give the parent a fine, you know? There's a lot of times where I hear about domestic violence, you know, against couples and stuff like that. And a lot of times there's restraining orders that are given to the opposite spouse or the other person. And the thing that gets women and guys also have the same problem, they get beaten up a lot, you know, because they're stupid enough to let them back in the house when they have a restraining order.
Okay, so going back to the interactions between officers and community members, help me understand where that point goes with that.
That's where they should give the person who allowed the person to come back in the house and beat them up. They should give that. They should put them in jail.
Okay, got it. All right.
You know, I mean, they shouldn't be so stupid. Granted, they always say, "Oh, I love him" or "I love her so much."
But we're not going to go there now.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't want to go to the DB place. Thank you, Tony.
But yeah, it just takes heavy analysis before you're going to come to a solution to the problem.
Okay, thank you for that. I forgot which way I said we're going to go around, but I think we haven't heard from John for a while. We went this way, so we'll just go with you, John, and come around here. So, interactions between community and police that you haven't already said. What would the interactions be like? How would we talk to one another and
Well,
with one another?
I'm not going to answer that directly.
Oh, boy. Okay, we'll be brief then.
There are so few police in Albuquerque compared to the population of Albuquerque that, and I've heard this terminology used a couple times tonight, beat police. There's hardly any beat police, whether you think you are or not, compared to large cities in the United States where the police are walking. They are the beat police, as far as I'm concerned. If you define a beat cop as someone who is driving around in an automobile in a police truck, I don't consider that beat police. I consider a policeman on a bicycle in a neighborhood as beat police. I consider any other pedestrian policeman a beat police, but not in an automobile. They're not picking up what's going on in the neighborhood unless their antenna roll.
Okay, so that's what's not happening. What should happen?
What should happen, I suppose, is at a much higher level of the government of the city of Albuquerque, which is not going to happen because we don't have the money to make it happen.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, then one of the things that should happen is more money, more funding should be allotted to the police department so we could have more.
Yeah, but it's not gonna happen because we're not gonna allow ourselves to be taxed more.
Well, okay, so we won't go there, but the point is that having the recommendations, so the idea is out there. Okay.